Hello, everybody. Soul Supreme here, and this is going to be my first YouTube review. And what better thing to review than the latest Star Wars movie, Star Wars The Last Jedi? Now, as a review from a perspective of a movie going, popcorn eating, blockbuster fan, I would say go see this because it's a good blockbuster movie. I would say, like, as a fan of a blockbuster movie, I would rate it as low as a 7 and maybe as high as an 8. But as a Star Wars fan, and here's to compete with that, as a Star Wars fan, I honestly do not know what the hell was going on for the most part. Story wise, direction wise, I had no clue what the directors or the producers like are trying to set up for the next film, because to me this movie was, it tripped up on so many levels. So before I begin this review, I just want to warn you that there are going to be spoilers. I'm going to talk about certain events, plot points, and stuff of that nature. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, I suggest you go see it and come back, or don't go see it and just listen to some random guy on YouTube spiel about it for the next, I don't know, however long this goes. So I thought the movie just messed up on so many crucial things. So instead of this just being a chronological review, I'm just going to talk about like certain things in particular that bothered me, and just things that like just didn't make sense to me, and from a Star Wars perspective. So the first thing I want to get out of the way is the Princess Leia scene at the beginning of the movie. Now, even though they played this scene up in the trailer, they had a different take on it than what I thought was going to happen. From the trailer, I thought Kylo Ren was going to like fulfill his evil destiny, fire the torpedoes at Princess Leia and kill her on the bridge. They were setting it up like that in the film, but when the time came, he decided not to fire. And but the two TIE fighters that were following him fired instead, and they hit the bridge, and they showed an explosion, and only her getting sucked out of space. Everyone else just disappeared in the explosion. And before I get too far into this, let me say this. Admiral Akbar died in that. Admiral fucking Akbar died in that explosion. And so the scene continues at like after like a few seconds, the scene continues where it shows Princess Leia's body in space. And I thought it was like supposed to be some poetic send off to Carrie Fisher, who, as we know, died during the making of this film. But then what happens is she regains consciousness, and what I'm assuming is her force powers activating, and she pulls herself back on the ship, and they send her into like medbay. And at that moment I was like, okay, even as a Star Wars fan, I know that was fucking stupid on like just several different levels. Like level one, you get sucked off into space like that, and like in that traumatic event of getting attacked on a bridge, an explosion happening, you getting sucked out into space for like over a minute, you will be dead. No matter which galaxy you in, no matter if it's like down the street from my house or far, far away in fucking Idaho, you're not gonna like live through that. But somehow she did. And another thing, in the expanded universe, which is like now officially non-canon, in the expanded universe, they did have like, Princess Leia truly like, using her force abilities and training with it. Especially, I remember this one thing I read, like book I read, where Luke Skywalker turned to the dark side, and at one point, Leia fought him and bested him in combat. And I was like, okay. But as we all know, Disney got rid of the expanded universe so they can focus on the new Cool Kids Club of Star Wars. And by the Cool Kids Club, as we all know, it begins with KKK. But by KKK, I don't mean men in white hoods. I just mean people doing ignorant shit. And like, it just came completely out of nowhere. And like, her character to me should have died at that moment. It would have been, like traumatic though, but I felt it would have, been a fitting ending for that character, Princess Leia. So after that, like, skullfuckery, it shows Finn trying to, escape the ship to go find Rey, and during the middle of it, he sees this girl crying, and it's this Asian girl, and her sister at the beginning of the very beginning of the film, when they were attacking the dreadnought, her sister was the one who finished the mission and sacrificed herself to destroy the dreadnought. But the scenes with her always came off as odd to me. Like, there was something like just off about it. Like, she was just there to give like messages, like public service announcements, messages like, don't forget to brush your teeth before and after every meal, like, type shit. And it especially got worse when they went to this one particular planet where they did this whole thing where all rich people are evil and hedonistic, and they live a life of whoring and slavery and all sorts of other terrible ills, all the while living off the backs of children who are taught to train these fox lemur things that are horses somewhat. But for some reason, like, the kids aren't really needed to train, because I saw this one alien guy whipping the damn thing, and then the kid tried to stop him, and then the alien guy turned and was like, don't make me beat your ass too. And like, I was like, what in the hell was that? That was the one thing I thought of, like, during that entire scene of their planet. Finn was like, wow, this is a neat place. I don't know why you hate it. And then she's like, oh, all you need to do is look closer. And, Finn looked through like these binoculars, and for some reason, these guys were just doing their crap out in the open while everyone was out in the casino having fun and all this other stuff. I'm like, okay. So she says they spent the money. The Asian girl discusses then that the reason why these people are so rich was because they sold weapons and manufacturing to the First Order, such as like supplying them with ships, weapons, like ATSTs, like ATSTs 2.0 and like shit like that. But they also, like, it was like, one of those veiled things saying, oh, the military industrial complex is like, enslaving the world around them while the rich gets richer and the poor gets poorer type bullshit. I'm like, yeah, Star Wars really don't need that shit right now. Can't we just keep it fun and fantastical? I mean, we're talking about a universe where lightning can come from people's hands, people can jump like 20-30 feet in the fucking air and like fight with laser swords. Can't we just keep it clean? If anyone catches that reference, keep it clean, video game reference, gotta be somewhat old school-ish for that. But I thought those scenes on that planet were kind of just off-putting. It was like, free the animals, free the children slaves. Like, I don't know why the hell they had the children slaves in the first place, where, I mean, I'm pretty sure an adult would be better suited to taking care of those big-ass lemur things, but, what do I know? So they get thrown into prison because, spoiler alert, they get a parking ticket on the planet. And I want to say, I'm going to mess up his name, probably. I believe it's because I'm gonna confuse this. It's this actor who played the Wolfman in the the 2000s remake of the Wolfman. His name is something Del Toro, and I know I might say his name wrong. I'm gonna if I say Guillermo del Toro, I'm maybe thinking of that director of like the director of Pan's Labyrinth. So I'm just gonna say Del Toro because that's the last part of his name. He played this character called Benito, if I remember correctly, and Benito was like the slimy criminal smuggler, code breaker, rogue type character, always looking out for himself. And then there was this one sad scene where he asked the girl for payment, and she gave him her dead sister's like matching necklace. And they had a heartwarming scene where they get back on like the Imperial ship and start to like hack the systems, and he used it, he gave it back, so he's like, I just needed a conductor. So shortly after that, they get captured, and the next thing you know, he betrays them by selling them out and selling out the rebels' plans and all that good stuff. And he was like, good versus evil, blah blah blah. He said it's like really I like how his character was, to me, the only interesting new character so far was because he actually made valid points through his scenes. When Benito was on the ship with Finn, and Finn was like, hey, give back her necklace, and he was like, what? He says, blah blah blah. And so Benito shows him that, oh yeah, this ship that we stole was an arms dealer who was selling arms to the First Order. And then after a couple taps and scrolls, he shows that they were also selling X-Wings to the Resistance, showing that, the Resistance aren't above this shit either. And that was really like the only good takeaway I remember from the movie, was that saying, yeah, the Resistance really is no better than the First Order. So I mean, all this talk about hope and bullshit, I mean, to me, it's all just, it's the same side of the, it's two different sides of the same coin, I meant to say. But yeah, he was like the only character to me, the only new character to me that was interesting. So let's go to another part I would like to discuss, which is the Rey and Luke Skywalker scenes. Those scenes kind of like seemed like they were going somewhere, but then they never went anywhere with it. Such as, Luke, he did his thing where like they do this in like all movies like this, where a young trainee or some shit tries to find a master, and the master is like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I gave this all up because either like somebody betrayed me, or I lost my apprentice to evil, or some crap like this, and I don't want the same thing to happen, so like piss off. And like the character, that whole thing was like, yeah, I've seen it, heard it all before. And they had like some interesting scenes where Luke, like during that time, Luke kept trying to like push Rey off, and then he accepted the trainer. But then the interesting part about those scenes was during that time, Rey and Kylo Ren were connected to each other through the Force, and they were having like conversations, talking about each other, not really as enemies, but more of on a level of them trying to understand why the other person has these motives, like what's their motivations. So like all the while, Kylo Ren during his communications with Rey was telling her, did he ever tell you what happened the night I destroyed the Jedi Temple? And she finally asked Luke. Luke gives her one story. Then when she goes back to Rey, she was like, you betrayed him and stuff. He said he didn't tell you the whole truth. And he told, like, Kylo then told Rey about his perspective. Like, he woke up in the middle of the night seeing Luke Skywalker with a lightsaber over him, like about to knock the shit out of him, and then he fought back. But then after a short little duel with Luke Skywalker, Rey finally forced like the whole truth to come out, where Luke was planning for an instant was planning on killing Kylo Ren in his sleep because he saw the future, basically what he would do in the future on the dark side. And Kylo woke up in the middle of it, and Luke was like trying to do take backs, like to say didn't mean to try to take it back. That's when they fought, and that's when, you know, Kylo destroyed the Jedi Temple. I thought that those scenes were interesting because, you know, it at least provided some background on the events of why, like, you know, Kylo Ren is on the dark side and with Supreme Leader Snoke, and why Luke is all bitter old man Skywalker. And I thought those scenes were okay. I'm not gonna really talk about those birds, like the whatever the hell those bird things were called that were pissing off Chewbacca, but I'll say this: my girlfriend, she liked them because, you know, as you know, she likes them because they were cute. I thought they were just there because, you know, just for the entertainment of like kids and stuff. And I thought, you know, they were relatively harmless, but they did, like, towards the end of the movie, like, did take up some scene space to me, like, just a little too much for comfort. Other than that, I was just relatively benign on them. So let's also get to another critical thing I thought. And this is the one I thought was the biggest, well, one of the biggest crimes of all. I'll say it's the second top one I have with this movie. What in the hell was that scene where Supreme Leader Snoke was killed by Kylo Ren, and Rey and Kylo Ren both took on who I truly have no idea. I thought those were like just Imperial guards, like what were those? Were they called the Imperial Guards or Praetorian Guards? Or I can't remember what their names were. Or if those were like the Knights of fucking Ren they were hyping about in the last movie. And like, so let's talk about this scene. Let's break this down. Rey, after communicating with Kylo Ren and, you know, pushing Luke Skywalker to make his confessions about why he did like attempt to murder Kylo Ren, Rey then has Chewbacca drop her off on the Imperial flagship, and when she gets on board, Kylo takes her to Supreme Leader Snoke, and while they're on the elevator, they're both like talking to each other, saying like, I know about your destiny, you know about my destiny. And Rey was like, I know what you're gonna do when the time comes, and I'll help you. And he goes, and Kylo Ren is like, yes, when the time comes, I hope you'll make the right decision. So they get in there. Supreme Leader Snoke is all like, well done, my apprentice. You've finally done something good with your life. And the next thing you know, he's interrogating Rey, trying to like figure out where Luke Skywalker was, and all the while, she's like saying, you don't have complete control over Kylo, because we both spoke to each other, and I see like the struggle in his like soul using the Force and whatnot. The next thing you know, Snoke comes out and says, oh yes, I was the one that bridged the gap between your two minds, so I know everything. I know what you're feeling, I know what he's feeling, all of this, like whatnot. And the next thing you know, he's like, now Kylo, finish your training and kill her. And she's like, he's not gonna do it. He says, oh yes he will. And he closes his eyes. Snoke closes his eyes, and it's all like, I can see the feeling in his soul. he's gonna take his lightsaber and plunge it in his enemy. And all the while, Kylo is using the Force to turn the lightsaber that he took from Rey, that was laying next to Snoke. He turns it, points it towards Snoke, and activates it inside of Snoke's body. And I'm guessing, I don't know who did it, but I think Kylo Ren did a Force pull, cut Snoke in half, and Rey caught the lightsaber. And from that moment on, they start fighting like I'm just gonna call them Knights of Ren. I don't know if they are. They probably are, and if they were, then I mean, they were hyped up for nothing because they did absolutely nothing except stand there, did cool poses, and then a small fight scene, and then they all died. All the while, like during that fight scene, I was wondering why Kylo or Rey were not using their Force powers against these guys, because I'm almost completely certain that they did that, the fight would have been a lot quicker and a lot cleaner. And speaking of cleaning, I'm pretty sure this was the first Star Wars movie which, like, I have to say had like a graphic ass scene in it. Like, don't get me wrong, like Phantom Menace had the scene where Darth Maul gets cut in half with a lightsaber, but that scene was pretty clean compared to, like, you know, other movies and whatnot. Like the scene in Revenge of the Sith where Anakin, like when he's becoming Darth Vader and he gets his legs and his other arm, like his only other human arm left, like severed during his duel with Obi-Wan. Okay, they had a scene in here where Kylo was fighting one of these Knights of Ren. I'm just gonna call them, like, you know, correct me if I'm wrong. Who knows? They probably work for Jabba the Hutt, or they're probably the Knights of Fett, Boba Fett's legacy. But during the fight, he knocks one of them into what I'm assuming was a turbine, and they got blended up, and it looked like a blood spray. It was coming up with a mix of blood and armor and chunks of flesh and cloth. I couldn't really tell, but I just know it was like, it looked like a blood spray coming up, and I was like, Jesus Christ, that was graphic as all hell for a Star Wars movie. And, you know, at that moment, Rey was like, come on, Kylo, let's go. And then Kylo was like, listen, Rey, join me. We can, like, he was like, forget the past, forget the Sith, forget the Jedi, forget all of it. He says, let the First Order, let the Resistance, let them all die. Join me and we can rule this galaxy together and, like, under a new order and stuff. I was like, what in the hell is going on? To be honest with you, at that moment, I thought Rey was going to consider it and possibly accept it, which if she did, that would have set up episode 9 in a much better position, because it would have been a lot more interesting. Like, from my perspective, I thought it would have been interesting if Rey took Kylo Ren's offer and they became, like, you know, part of the rule of two with the Sith. Like, Ren becomes the master and Rey is, you know, the apprentice. But it would have been interesting to see how that power balance would have, like, shifted, like, by the 9th movie, where, you know, let's say Kylo is somewhat stagnating, like, he gets stronger, but his strength is somewhat stagnating, while Rey gets, like, stronger, and, you know, there's, like, a power struggle between them, and that would have been an interesting episode 9. Not gonna lie, I would have been very interested to see, like, some power dynamic like that, but I know that shit ain't gonna happen. Especially with that, like, that ending scene where all of this, like, other shit was going on. Like, there was this one scene where I actually thought would have been a nice enough for Finn. Finn, he's a character I'm relatively neutral about. I'm not gonna say he's, like, a terrible character. The character of Finn really isn't a terrible character in my opinion. But the whole thing was, it seems that he doesn't really do much. And then the things he does, like, accomplish, to me, doesn't seem like, it doesn't make any type of sense. Like, for instance, while on the Star Destroyer, while the, like, Kylo Ren and Rey are dealing with the Supreme Leader Snoke and all of them. Finn, the Asian girl, and Benito get captured. And as I said before, or as I probably said before, Benito sells out the rebels' plans, and the Empire starts attacking the rebellion directly by destroying their transport ships that they were trying to get onto this planet's surface to hide and send out a distress signal. But it was a scene where Captain Phasma came back from the shit that happened in Force Awakens. She comes back and all she does is well, if it isn't F9 or whatever the hell Finn's stormtrooper name and rank, or basically she's like, well, if it isn't Finn. And this leads to one of the dumbest fucking things I've ever seen. This is one of my biggest gripes with this movie was all of the wasted characters. Snoke is dead. He had a build up in The Force Awakens, and then you have a shitty ass payoff. And then I know there's probably some people saying he's not dead or what have you, but I'm almost certainly guaranteeing you, with these writers and stuff, directors, producers, J.J. Abrams' direction especially, he's probably gonna say, oh yeah, he's dead, he's not coming back, or he may come back in the TV show like how Darth Maul did in, I believe, Star Wars Rebels. Am I getting that right? I'm pretty sure that's the series he came back in. But I'm just certain that Snoke is dead. Who is he? Where did he come from? It might be elaborated on a fucking book they'll sell on Amazon for $35.49 or some shit. And that's 35% off because, Disney got to make their money somehow. So they'll do a hardcover, special edition that's $35. Where you get to know what happened to Snoke or his past background and all that. But I thought he was just a waste of time. If he wasn't going to do anything, he did absolutely nothing in episode 7. And he barely did a goddamn thing in episode 8, and he dies. It's there's no point in his character to me. Same thing with Captain Phasma. I'm pretty certain, 99% certain, Captain Phasma is dead, because let's talk about her death right now. So during all of this occurrence, back when Admiral Purplehair, in her attempt to save the rebel transport fleet from getting destroyed while landing on the planet's surface, she turns around and goes hyperspace through the capital ship and wiping out half the fleet while doing that. Now, all of this was going on while Finn and the Asian girl were about to be executed. So, as you know, the execution stops because the explosion happens, and for some reason, everybody around them dies, but the two characters are okay. And that also brings up another plot hole. During that explosion, even though Phasma was next to them and the explosion happened, she wasn't around. But then a few seconds later, she comes walking through the smoke with a squad behind her, and it's get them. And I'm well, I mean, shouldn't you be dead? To be honest. So after that, Finn picks up that little stun baton doohickey thing, and Phasma pulls out this silver spear pike polearm type deal, and they start fighting. I'm isn't Captain Phasma supposed to be the best stormtrooper? And I know a little bit of her background. She grew up on a rough ass planet, got picked up by the Empire, and they turned her into a lethal killing machine. This is what I know from the comics and such. But here, she can barely fight a self-proclaimed ex-stormtrooper who was a janitor for most of his time on while being a stormtrooper. From what he says, he used to be a janitor pretty much the majority of his time there, and only recently when he got into combat missions Like the first time, I guess that was like his first time on a combat mission on episode 7. He choked out and was like, I want to like leave the Empire because ghosts, they're evil. But but no, I truly don't know why like Finn was able to best Phasma because they build her up as like this badass. It was like they build her up as a badass in the trailers and so on, and like the interviews and like stuff before episode 7. And what happens? She gets captured and thrown into a trash compactor. And episode 8, she shows up like over halfway through the film, and then like she's only in for like less than 5 scenes, and then she gets killed off. Like, really? She fights Finn with like her polearm thing, and he's fighting her with a stun baton, and she knocks him over like this ledge, which I'm guessing I'm not sure what you call those things, but it's like you can see those things on aircraft carriers where they lift the plane up. I'll call them like lift elevators or something. She knocks him down, and apparently he landed on a lift elevator, and she's like, well, I dealt with him. The Asian girl like shoots at her, but surprisingly, her armor was able to like reflect shots off like completely. The shot just bounced off her, and she was missing the Asian girl while she was shooting. All the while, Finn is coming up next to her on the elevator. He says, hey! And then she turns around and gets smacked in the face by his stun baton. And what I thought was like the dumbest fucking, like, it was, I want to say let's say it. I thought it was the dumbest fucking scene in the entire movie. And she lays there and her visor is broken. You can see her eye, and then she goes like, oh, you're all scum. You're all just scum. And then Finn is like, stands over here, is like, yeah, rebel scum. Ugh. And then she falls to her death in flames and shit. I was like, well, that was a wasted character. I mean, you built her up to be something, and then in the end, she turned out to be nothing but just another fucking stormtrooper that could fight decently well and had special armor. Whoopee. Speaking of which, if all stormtroopers, unless her armor was made out of some special rare material, why don't y'all deck out an entire division or hell, even a platoon of stormtroopers with that special chrome armor that could reflect blaster shots? Or maybe it was only able to reflect like light pistol blaster, but still, I'm guessing if it can reflect that, and it'll probably absorb the other regular blasters like rifles and stuff somewhat better than your regular armor. So Phasma's dead, Snoke is dead, and then we get to like this final battle on the planet where they like, as worded by Finn himself, they come out with like this thing called the laser battering ram, which is, as in his own words, was miniaturized Death Star tech. And I'm like, well, I mean, okay, miniaturized Death Star tech, that makes sense. But why the hell couldn't they put it on a vehicle instead of having like the walkers carry it looking like weird? So during this final battle, like, all the not too much interesting stuff happens. The ship blows up, and all of them are trying to like stop the battering ram from reaching the gates, so it'll fire its laser and blow the hole through the wall. So all of a sudden, Rey comes back on the Millennium Falcon, shooting the TIE fighters. And the first thing that came to my mind was, 1, how the hell did she get on the Millennium Falcon? 2, what the hell, what the hell, was, all of that? Let me just skip all that. But, yeah, so during all this, skullduggery, inane crap, they're about to fire the laser cannons, and everyone is like, we have to retreat. And Finn is like, no, we can make it. And she's like, the Asian girl's like, Finn, no, we can go back, fight another day and stuff. He's like, no, we can do this. We're almost there. He turns off his communicator, and it looks like he's gonna sacrifice himself by crashing into the cannon, destroying, killing himself and blowing up the cannon in the process. And two things, he was in the middle of this laser like cannon's like ray, and as it was showing, the ray was hot enough where you could see like the metal like on the giant gate begin to glow. Yet somehow he was able to go through it without burning alive himself. And I thought that was kind of like, oh, good lord. It was like one of those good lord moments. And all of a sudden, right when it looks like he's going to sacrifice himself, the Asian girl comes back, swings around, and crashes into his ship, knocking them both away like from the cannon. And the cannon fires off anyway. And the one thing I thought of when that scene was like, okay, looking at that, they both should have died on impact. Like the girl, it would have been funny as all hell if the girl crashed into Finn, they both died, and like the laser just went off anyway. Like I thought, like, you know, that would have just been hilarious, but no, the laser goes off. Luke Skywalker shows back up. I'm just gonna wrap up this right now because I got like stuff to do. But Luke Skywalker shows back up, steps in front of like the destroyed gate. Kylo's like, everybody fire at him. They all fire at him with the Moonwalkers, like the AT-ATs and stuff, and all like the units are firing on him. Luke Skywalker comes out like the dust, brushes his shoulder off because he's a pimp. And Kylo comes outside and begins to like duel with him. All the while, Luke is just using it as a distraction so Rey could collect what's left of the Resistance to escape. And, you know, they had like this throwback scene where Luke is saying basically along the lines of what Ben Kenobi said to Darth Vader, where he says, it's along the lines of, if you destroy me, I'll become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. And Kylo tries to strike down Luke, and it turns out that the Luke he was fighting with the whole time was just a projection, like a force projection of Luke Skywalker that he was casting all the way back on the planet he was on originally. And Kylo was like, no. He says, the Resistance, they escape. He's like, no! And from that moment on, it shows that Luke Skywalker, like, you know, did like the same thing that happened to Yoda and Ben Kenobi before him. They vanish and become one with the Force. That's what the ending like portrayed, and it was like set it up where Rey is gonna be like the new Jedi Master and all of that stuff. Though speaking of Yoda, I do have to say Yoda's scene in the movie was like pretty likable. Like he showed back up. He's like, "Oh, Luke, you were acting like a dumbass." I can't even do a Yoda voice right now, but he was like, "Oh, Luke, I'll help you destroy like the Jedi books of knowledge, like the fucking Bibles and stuff," and you know, confirm Yoda is actually a secret Sith Lord. He cast a super force lightning that was enough to destroy the tree that was hiding the Force books. but overall, about this movie, I would have to say I enjoyed it as a film, but as a Star Wars fan, I was just left feeling, I don't know. I want to say empty. I don't want to say empty. That's probably, well, you know what? Unfulfilled? Yeah, that's a better term. I feel unfulfilled. Like this episode sets up so much stuff, but it never really followed through on it. Characters that should have been like more productive just were killed off. New characters that were added were really, generally speaking, unnecessary and pointless. Like the only character I thought that was interesting they added was Del Toro's character. I think his name was Benito. That was like the only other interesting character I saw, and the rest were just like, yeah, just come back on episode 9 where Kylo Ren resurrects Darth Maul, who resurrects Darth Sidious, who resurrects Darth Vader, and they all form like, I don't know, fucking New Republic or some stupid shit like that. But you know, I would say if you really like to go see your summer blockbuster, well, it's not really summer, but your blockbuster films that everyone knows and loves, and so on and so forth, go see this. If you're a Star Wars like super fan, go see this. If you like the new direction of films, like the new trilogy is taking. If you are angry about the new trilogy, I can almost certainly tell you are not going to like this movie. But for me, as a mid-tier, low-level, like no knowledgeable fan, I know some stuff about the Star Wars universe. I played a lot of their games. In particular, I read some of the stories from the expanded universe. I'm actually like very interested in like most of the stuff, and I'm knowledgeable. Like if you mention like some characters or some situations, I'll be like, oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. I know what's going on. But yeah, if you're like a fan like me, I would say you will probably enjoy the film for some of its qualities and hate it for others. And with that said, it's really up to you how you would think about the film. Overall, it's just that, like I said, I'm unfulfilled. I don't know how I like truly feel about this movie. It was entertaining to watch, but not entertaining like logic wise. Like if you're going from like the Star Wars mythos, it's just too many things in there is just clashing for me to like feel satisfied and understanding where the direction of this like new trilogy is going. And who knows? Maybe they'll add it on to Star Wars Battlefront 2 as a fucking DLC where, hey, you get to play as that chick from Battlefront 2's campaign. Oh, God, don't even get me started with that shit. That pointless ass. I'm hardcore Empire, but then when I see a guy, an Imperial soldier, push down a civilian, like the 600th time, I got a problem. 599 times before that it was okay, but the 600th time, that's too far. Anyway, I hope you like this video, dislike it. It's really just like a little opinion piece from me. I would like to see if anybody else has like their own opinions and so on and so forth. And I doubt anybody would want to hear me talk for 42 minutes rambling about Star Wars. And with that said, yeah. So leave a like or a comment. Leave a like and comment if you like. Dislike if you also like. And I guess I'll see you next time. Later.